Schematics. You've looked at schematics before, okay? But I want to talk about some of the oddities about schematics that need to be addressed. One of them is track schematics. This is mainly Euro stuff. Volkswagens, Porsches, Mercedes-Benz, Jaguar, well, maybe not so much Jaguar, but they use what's called a track schematic, and they're a little different. They're broken down a little differently. They're laid out differently, but honestly, once you understand how to work with them, they're really not too bad. They're just unique and different. They're broken down into, sections, standard equipment, engine-specific stuff, and then specific and optional equipment, like airbags or alarm systems or anti-lock brakes. You could go into these individually. Now, what they do is they lay out the schematic, and there are numbers, starting at 1 and going through, however many they need, and it's broken down into, then A, B, C, D along the vertical axis. So horizontally it's numbers, vertically it's letters, and it's laid out on this grid pattern. So if you're looking for something specific, it'll give you the nomenclature like G 344. Well, you look at G, and then you got to go to 344, which may be 15 pages over. Get it? A lot of times there's hyperlinks too. We'll talk about it. So, if we look at it, here it is. Here's our grid layout. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L along one side, and then it's starting out with 1 and cruising on over. Now, these blue boxes, if we're in all data, Mitchell 2, these are hyperlinks that'll take you to this specific thing. Notice they don't put names on stuff. They just call it like, N7. They don't tell you what this is on here. You need to go to the legend in order to figure it out. Get it? So here's N7. N7 on this schematic is the exterior lamp failure module. Why can't they just put that on there? Yeah, I don't know, but that's just how they do it. That's just how it works, so deal with it. Okay, so we look at, the designation number, and then that tells us what it is, this E2, E1, this guy down here means something. This PE 00.9-2710, that's the name. I know, it's a little weird. But, if we look at it, oopsie, I wanted to go back. If we look at it, oopsie, I forgot the number, this E2, 8, whatever it is, so we'll pick on the E2. Let's see, E2 should be on here. Oh, I didn't put it on here. Anyways, so you would need to go look in the legend for what it's for, and then sometimes they'll even, they're nice enough to put a hyperlink in it, so this, fuel control, the PCM is what they're calling this. It gives you a hyperlink to go to it, which is kind of nice. So sometimes wiring and circuits don't begin and end on the same track number or page. So if it, starts at the end of one, it'll have a notation for where it is. And, you have to remember where you came from sometimes. Here, I'll show you. Oopsie, I'll show you. So we look at, here's 16 and then here's 17. These guys cross over onto the next page. They just line right up. Get it? Now, sometimes these vertical circuits are traveling with the track numbers. So it may switch like a whole bunch of grids down the line that we need to look at. So this is where it's going to, or where it's coming from and where it's going to kind of nomenclature. So if we look at it, this guy right here, the starter clutch switch, that's this, well, it's this guy, this F194, goes to track 296, and it's coming from track 7. So 7 is where we're starting, and then 296 is where we're going. And if we look at it, here's 296, here's this track, and it's showing 7, because that's where we came from. You get it? It's really not that complicated when we look at it. So we look at this one right here. This spot right here is coming from 291. Now, this 135, that denotes a ground connection. So this 135 is a ground connection. Get it? 135 is a ground connection. So this is just showing you that all of these grounds, all of these things are tied in to this ground 135. So where does this guy go? Well, it goes to ground 135, but they got to switch it to track 296 to get there. Get it? Okay. Anyways. So at the top of the page, at the very, very top of the page, they put this kind of stuff in the power distribution. And this tells you stuff. And also I've laid out all this other stuff, like, you know, what does the 2 designate? That's S515, it's a 10 amp. You know, so here's 2 is a designation for fuse. And it's fuse number 15, and the 10 is a 10 amp, and it's in the relay panel. Get it? 3s. We look at 3s like this, where it's just a dot. That indicates a test point. So I can get to this number 1 line right here, more in this in a minute, through this test point. These things are pretty handy to know where they're at, because I can test the power line that's inside of the fuse box. Get it? Anyways, 4 on this one. Where's 4? 3, 4. See, that's this here. That's another test point. 5, this is denoting the cross section of the wire in military, or not military, metric. It's millimeters. So it's 0.5 millimeter wire. That's the wire designation. And then we have names of wire colors, although you really need to be careful, especially on the older stuff. They'll show, say you're working on an Italian car. Well, they're going to show the color designation in Italian or German or French. I don't know. Again, you're going to have to go and look at the legend to know what the designation for green is, because it's just not that easy sometimes. That's why they pay us the big bucks. All right. So we have a bunch of other stuff, and I don't know if I want to cover this stuff. It's on here. It's on the presentation. Please have a look at it. It's important. Okay? Now, when we gray out an area, this gray area right here shows individual terminals and pins in a multi-point connector. Okay? And then, you know, this 10 is actually a relay. Anyways, I don't want to talk too much about it. And then here is our legend. And if we look at our legend, no, I can hardly see it. GE on this one is yellow. It's not green. We look at, you know, GN is green, BL is blue, instead, you know, not black, SW is black. Thank you very much. Anyways, so up at the top, we have these numbers at the top. You see the 30, the 15, the X, and the 31. These tell us stuff. Battery positive is also numbered, you know, as 30, 50, X, or S, or 75. Battery ground on the bottom, it's always on the bottom, is often referred to a V, or it's just designated as 31. But, you know, it'll be attached to a bus bar, but then it doesn't really go anywhere. It just ends. And you're just expected to know that that's a ground point. Anyways. Okay, so up at the top, these, whoopsie, hang on, these numbers at the top, what do they designate? Well, these are specific designations. Terminal 1 is designated as ignition distributed low voltage, typically is an engine speed RPM indicator. Terminal 15 is switched battery positive voltage, goes on and off of the key. 30 is battery positive, hot all the time, and then 31 is usually designated as the ground. How accurate is that? That's pretty accurate. Terminal 50, starter control. 56 is headlights. 58 is parking lights. Terminal S, SU, or 75. Usually that's circuit switch battery, ignition switch battery positive, just like the 50 is. And then the designation X. You read these. I'm not expecting you to know them. You're not going to be tested on it, but if you run into a Euro, this is what all that stuff means. So you're going to run into one, save this, and you can go back and look. It does get kind of complicated. Thanks a lot. And then here are some of the symbols that they use. And most of them aren't too bad. We get to, like a thermofuse, circuit breaker, it's got this weird little 9 next to it. And then, starters and generators. Generators look like this. Ignition coils, primary and secondary side. Distributor mechanical, which they don't use anymore. Electronic distributors, glow plugs, and you can run through all these. They look a little weird. There's more of them. All right. Other odds and